This is History Myths and Myth Conceptions, and today's myth is Commodus killed Marcus Aurelius. It is a wild rumor that's been picked up by screenwriters. For example, Commodus participates in the death of Marcus Aurelius in The Fall of the Roman Empire. And since Ridley Scott's Gladiator in many ways was inspired by the fall of the Roman Empire, this interesting plot twist traveled to his movie as well. But no, Commodus didn't kill Marcus Aurelius. Ancient historians certainly vilify Commodus, and indeed he was a very problematic emperor. But not to an extent when he just murders his own father. Especially in a situation when this decision makes absolutely no sense, and can only lead to potentially disastrous consequences for Commodus himself. First of all, Commodus wasn't declared the emperor after his father's death. He was the emperor already, and he was a co-ruler of Marcus Aurelius for a few years, despite his young age, and everything has been done to transfer actual power from father to son as smoothly as possible. We don't know what Marcus actually thought about his son's character, but Commodus was his only choice as a successor. Marcus Aurelius wasn't a threat to his son's reign. He was the exact opposite. All of the sources indicate that Marcus Aurelius was very ill, although we don't know for sure what was the exact cause of this illness. One of the versions imply that he contracted some kind of a pestilence, quite probably the same Antonine plague that was taken to Europe from Asia by the troops of Lucius Verus more than a decade ago. Lucius Verus was the co-emperor of Marcus, and he died of this unidentified infectious disease. There is a tradition that actually describes that when Marcus Aurelius became absolutely sick to a point when he basically couldn't stand up from a bed, he stopped eating and drinking to speed up his own death. He knew that he was in a terminal condition, and he was contagious. So, as a philosopher, he decided that it is better for him to go as soon as possible. Another version is that it wasn't a contagious disease, but something else. Marcus Aurelius is usually described as a person who had a rather poor health for pretty much all of his life. Or, okay, relatively poor health. They didn't have antibiotics and effective cure for a large number of diseases during the time of the Roman Empire. They did what they could, but the mortality rate associated with the diseases was very high compared to our time. So Marcus was of poor health by the standards of ancient Rome, and by the modern standards, well, he'd probably surprise most of the medical workers. Anyway, some reports say that Marcus probably had a long-term illness, and he was in pain for many years. We don't know what it was. There were theories that it could be cancer. Marcus could be very philosophical about illness, stress, and all of this, but it is clear that if you're a subject of debilitating pain, it, at very least, affects your performance. So he tried to minimize the amount of pain. His physician was Galen, quite probably the best medical researcher of his time. It is believed that Galen tried to, if not to cure Marcus, but at least regularly provide him with the effective painkillers. It is very probable that late in his life, Marcus Aurelius was seriously dependent on drugs. Marcus Aurelius died at the age of 58, and pretty much everybody agrees that it was some kind of illness. A long-term illness or an infectious disease, or both at the same time. Commodus has a very, very bad reputation, but murdering your biggest political ally, who is at the same time is your own father? No, that just doesn't make any sense.